I'm Lindsay from The Lindsay Life. Today I'm going to share with you my process for repairing crocheted blankets. When someone gives you something they've crocheted, they're giving you a piece of themselves. So I've had people approach me because they've received a crocheted blanket from a loved one who may no longer be alive, and the blanket's got a tear or a hole, and some of the stitch work has come apart and it needs to be repaired. I'm always honored when someone asks me to do this, to be a part of maintaining that connection with the person who made the blanket and that they love. They want that blanket to be as good as new so they can continue to use it and love it. So to break down my process, first I'm going to show you the materials I use to repair a blanket and how I prepare the torn area of the blanket to get it ready for the actual crocheting repair. Then I'll show you how I do the actual crochet repair. This is definitely an advanced level skill, but it's something that I think you'll appreciate seeing in action, and I'm going to share my little tips and tricks for getting those repairs just right, so that hopefully this will be something that you'll have the confidence to try in the future when you've got a crocheted item that needs to be repaired. Let's get started. First, let's discuss the materials that we're going to use when we try to repair a blanket. Obviously, you're going to need scissors for cutting yarn. You're going to need some tapestry needles for weaving in ends. I generally find it useful to have a stitch marker or two lying around because I can use that if I need to hold a loop in place or some stitches in place. I've got an assortment of crochet hooks here standing by, because the thing is there's no pattern to work off of. So I'm just going to have to experiment with the different size hooks to see which hook size gives me the fabric I need with the yarn I have. Speaking of yarn, I do not work off the ball. And I'll show you why I don't later on when you see how I'm actually repairing. What I do is I wrap the yarn around my hand several times and I create a bundle, and I use these bundles as I'm working and repairing the blanket. Sometimes one bundle is enough, sometimes I need two. I just cut more off as I need it. Now, this yarn is a worsted weight yarn, and I could tell from looking at the original blanket that the original blanket is really closer to like a sport weight yarn. So the way I compensated for that, as you can see, this yarn is made up of separate plies. So I actually removed one ply of yarn from the entire bundle. So now my bundles of yarn only have 3 plies. That's 3 strands of yarn. That makes it thinner, and it's going to be easier to get the stitches to look the way I want. Usually you won't have to do that. Usually you're going to go with the yarn that's already the thickness of the yarn that pre-exists in the blanket. In this case, though, the closest match the blanket owner could find in color just didn't match in weight. So this is how I'm going to compensate for that. So let's start looking at the blanket. Okay, so now I've got the torn block that I'm going to try and repair. Granny squares, and this type of granny square, were worked from the center out. So I'm going to put this stitch marker around the center to help me kind of keep my bearings and know that this is where the first round was. Just gives me a point of reference. I'm also going to make sure that I've got the right side of the blanket facing up, which it looks like I do. But it's always good to double check before you get started. Now I've got a pretty large section that I'm going to have to fix, and I'm going to do that by crocheting in the stitches. But what that means is at the end, I've got to have enough of this strand and these broken pieces to weave in those ends. So as emotionally painful as it is, I'm going to have to actually take apart a little bit more of this blanket. So I'm going to lift up this part with the tear and try and see where the loose end of yarn is. If the blanket has been loved and washed, you may find the yarn is a little bit harder to take apart. And I'm just going to kind of tease the ends apart with my yarn needle. Yeah, there we go. And I'm going to do this on both sides, because on both sides I'm going to need a long enough piece to be able to weave in. And because the yarn is matted from love and use, I'm not too worried about this loop coming undone right now. If I was, I would just put that on a different stitch marker. And over here, I've got to examine this side of the opening on this row. Oh yeah, see? That was the tear. That just completely came out. And so I've got this stitch that I'm kind of saving over here. And I'm going to take a different tapestry needle and kind of see where this is. And now I'm going to go to the next row and see where my issues are with the next row. And you want to start from the inside or the bottom row or around out, because it will be easier to pick apart the yarn and get the ends free that way. And I can see there's the chain space, and actually this is great because it was by a corner. I'm going to see if I can slip this out in its entirety, because that would show me exactly how many chains were in that chain space. But it does not look like it's cooperating. So I'm going to keep working on this. We lost the stitch right there. So yeah, I am going to get some more stitch markers to hold those two loops for me so that I don't completely lose that stitch. And I'm going to continue to kind of pull apart the edges here so that I have ends that I can weave in securely at the end, because the last thing we want to do is construct a blanket repair that's going to fall apart. So I've pulled out my stash of stitch markers, and I put one here to hold this stitch on this edge of this row. This tail isn't coming out anytime soon. On the next row, I worked loose a tail, and I have another stitch marker holding the last loop of that stitch. Now I'm looking at this section, and I'm gonna have to repair this spot here. So I need to figure out what to do about all this in the middle. So I'm kind of thinking about how this is going to work. I'm going to start on the first repair row, and I'm going to work from right to left. and that will connect here. Then I'm probably going to turn and go back and end at the second repair row here. Then I'm going to have to get up, and I think what I'm going to want to do is get up in the middle of this 3 double crochet group. So I'm going to want to save this double crochet so that it doesn't disappear anywhere. And to make sure it doesn't, I'm going to put it on a hook, or rather on a stitch marker. And I know I'll be able to undo all this up to here. So I'm going to come up here, I'm going to crochet across, which means it's going to be okay to have this bundle here. So as I'm ripping out this section, I don't want to lose these stitches from that group. So I'm going to take, well, which of these stitch markers is the new one? I'm going to take the new stitch marker and slide it through the base of this 3 double crochet group so that this group doesn't come undone. And I can see the yarn is loose here, and it's also incredibly matted. So because I'm connecting all the way over here and this part is all the way over here, I'm just going to go ahead and cut this. I know it's ironic that to repair a blanket, sometimes you've got to take it apart. Yeah. Okay. And yeah, there we go. That's going to be a nice long end that I will be able to weave in. I'm going to go ahead and pull it out. Let's see, that last little chain stitch is being fussy. And now I've pulled this out. This is the end I'm going to weave in. And I've got these stitch markers holding the bottom of these groups of stitches together so that I don't lose those and I can work into them as I make the repair. And you'll see exactly how I do that once we're ready to get started on the repair. Okay, so I've managed to kind of widen the area and get some good tails here that I'll be able to secure. So I'm going to go ahead and start the repair process. And as I go, if I find I need to work on the edges a little bit more, I'll do that. I did use a steel crochet hook at some points to help work the threads and the knots apart. So I'm going to bring in my bundle of yarn, and I'm going to lift this up, and I'm going to look at the right side because I'm right-handed at the first row we're going to repair. And you'll see I've got this stitch marker here where the double crochet was down to the last 2 loops, and I kind of snagged those both on the stitch marker intentionally. So now I'm going to take the stitch marker off. I'm going to slip those 2 loops carefully onto a crochet hook. I'll try this size first. I'm going to have to be careful to try not to split the yarn. Okay. So here's the tail I'm going to weave in later. So I'm just going to let that hide on the back. And I'm going to leave a tail of my new yarn. And because this isn't quite a match color-wise, you'll be able to see what I'm doing a little bit better. And I'm just going to yarn over and pull through so that I join my new yarn and finish off that double crochet stitch. Now this was a corner, and in this corner we have 3 double crochet. It looks like maybe a chain 3 space and then another 3 double crochet. I've already got this one, so now I'm going to work 2 more, the chain space. I've got this one at the end, so 2 more after that. So I'm going to work into the space, and I'm going to try to work tightly so that I can match the size of the other stitches. Let's chain 3 for this space. Let's work 2 more double crochet. 1, 2, and now I need to connect to this one, and I'm going to do that. Let's see, let's get a good look at this. This isn't quite as long a tail as I would normally want, but I was having some problems with the yarn being matted there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set this hook down, and first I'm going to secure this by making a little knot that I'm going to be able to hide. And this is going to be a teensy weensy knot. So I'm going to try pulling in my steel hook. And use the steel hook to pull the ends through so that I can make a knot right there. Now I'm going to go back to the crochet I was doing, and I'm going to connect with a slip stitch just kind of up here where the top of that double crochet is. So there's a slip stitch, and there's my new corner. So now I've got to get up to the other row. Now I told you before that I noticed that this was worked in rounds like this. So really for the next round, I should be starting over here. If I wanted to, I could leave an end here, cut it off, and start anew on this side. It would just leave me with 2 ends to weave in of new yarn on every single round. I don't want to do that, so I'm just going to go ahead and turn at the end of the round. But first I need to look, and I need to figure out how I'm going to get up to the height I need. So let's see what we're missing. Here is a 3 double crochet group. This 3 double crochet group is going to need a chain 1, and then to work in the corner space. And then let's move the tail out of the way. Over here, I've got 2 double crochets left in this space, so I'll have to make the 3rd one. So I'm going to slip stitch my way up this double crochet that already exists. So I'm just sticking my hook in wherever it finds purchase to get up to the top of this stitch. Now I'm going to turn. You need a lot of space to maneuver when you're doing something like this. And now I'm working from the back side, and I'm going to make the chain 1 space that I was missing. Now I'm at the corner. So as we said before, in the corner, 3 double crochet, chain 3, 3 double crochet, 2, 3. I'm going a little fast here because if you're doing something like blanket repair, you already know how to do double crochets and chains. That's not the challenge in this. The challenge in this is putting it all together to figure out what's missing and how to build that section up. So I'm over here. I made my corner. I'm looking down at the row below. Here's the next chain space, and I've already got 2 double crochet in there. So I'm going to make my 3rd double crochet, which in this case will be the first one. And I'm going to connect to this one with a slip stitch. Usually I'm using slip stitches to connect. In this case, I need to remove the stitch marker off the loop first. And that loop, well, yeah, there we go. This loop will come onto the hook whether it likes it or not. Lifting it up, working it over, great. We're gonna slip stitch. And it looks really ugly right now, but remember we're on the back side, so now we're gonna flip it. So we're back on the right side. And see what it looks like with this part repaired. So you can see, let's spread this out a little better. I've got this end I'm going to weave in. We've rebuilt this. We used this group to come up. We rebuilt this corner. We helped complete this group, and now we're over here. I'm going to move my tails to make it easier to see. Now, with this group over here, you can see that the chain space was still intact. So instead of slip stitching my way up here, I'm just going to start a double crochet like I would at the beginning of the row with the chain 3. So I'm going to chain 1, and I'm going to chain 2. But for the 3rd chain, I'm going to connect to the previous work by working a slip stitch from here into here. So once again, we're going to remove a stitch marker, stick a hook in. Does it matter if it's top to bottom or bottom to top? Whatever is most comfortable. And yarn over and pull through everything. And that made a slip stitch that connected to the previous work. Now that does put our chain 3 a little bit to the side, when really the chain 3 would normally be here. So I'm going to show you, it's very common as you're doing something to realize that, hey, maybe this doesn't give me exactly what I want. So it's okay to say, hey, you know what? This wasn't what I want. I'm going to rip this out back to where it connected. Put the loop back on my hook. And since I wanted that chain 3 to come from this space, I'm just going to slip stitch over to this space so that it'll line up better. Now that I'm in that space, I'll do that chain 2 and slip stitch in there to connect. There we go. That's beautiful. Okay, yeah, and see how now this group is going to be centered better. This tail I will bring to the back so that it's not in our way as we work, and I will use my steel hook to pull it through. It's a crinkly tail. There we go. Hooray. Come on. There you go. Excellent. Okay. So now I'm on this row. Now you may have noticed something, which is on this row I'm going to have to finish this group, and then I'm going to have a chain space, which is where these double crochet were initially worked into. This is when you're going to see why I work off a bundle of yarn instead of working straight off the ball. So first let me finish this group. Okay. Now, normally I would chain one to make a space and just continue to the corner. But as I said before, this group of 3 double crochet is supposed to be worked over this chain. So what I am going to do is I'm going to pull this loop of yarn and the entire bundle of yarn through the base of those 3 stitches. So I'm going to lengthen the loop and remove the stitch marker. And I'm going to pass the stitch marker from left to right, the opposite of the direction that I'm working in. Got to make sure to get through the base of all stitches in order. Now I'm going to pull my loop through. Sometimes this works smoothly, sometimes it gets stuck. You'll never know till you try. Oh, did we get it? Oh, we got it through almost 2. Let's see if we can tease it out the rest of the way. Come on now. I do tend to talk to my work, but that's okay. People talk to plants, I can talk to yarn. Okay, please to come through the last loop. Excellent. So we've got, oh, did I lose part of the base of the stitch? Yes, I did. So as I said, a lot of this is hit and miss. We're going to start again. And I think I'm going to move down a hook size since I'm trying to work through these tight spaces. Make sure we have all that there. Now, come on. I'm going to rotate it. And try to pull it through the way I normally would when I'm crocheting. There we go. Okay. So I've got that loop through, but I've still got this yarn hanging out here. Now, if this was a pattern where it was worked into the chain and not the chain space, all I would do is tighten up this loop and finish the chain. But that leaves that strand on the bottom, which in this pattern isn't supposed to be here. So I'm going to take my bundle, which has gotten shorter as I've worked, and I'm going to search for my small tapestry needle, which has attempted to escape since I started this project. We'll see if we can get it to work with this one or if this one's too thick. And I'm going to go the same direction through the base of all the stitches. And actually, the fact that I've got the loop from the crochet hook in there now is going to make this a lot easier. And I just pull through the entire bit of yarn. Yay! Now that I've got that all pulled through, I'm going to work on the group that goes into this corner. the 3 double crochet, chain 3, 3 double crochet. But you'll see that the corner group for the next row is still here. So I'm going to use that same trick to pull the chain 3 space I make through all of those stitches. So first 3 double crochet, chain 3. Now I'm going to loosen the loop because I've got to pull it through the base of this entire section. So once again, I'm going to kind of flip it up and insert my hook from the last stitch through to the first stitch so that I'm going to be able to pull the loop through here. Let's see, I'm not confident that I've caught the base of all the stitches. So let's see what we got going on here. Yeah, no, I missed some stuff. We're gonna go through the base of this stitch, doing our best to catch all the loops. The next stitch, the next stitch gets threaded on. Oh, there we go, come on. Yay, hooray. And now I'm gonna tighten the loop around the hook so that I can try to pull the loop through all the stitches. And I find that easier to do if I lift up and turn the work. So I'm going to put the loop on here and pull it through. Pull it through there. Yay! Looks like I got it through. I'm going to lengthen it just a little, though it looks like it might have gotten caught. Let's double check. There we go. Now that this loop is hanging out here, I'm going to use my tapestry needle once again to bring the rest of the thread through the base of the same stitches. So just like before, gonna stick this through, which should be easier now that the loop has come through. Hold it straight. Come on, yep. Pull all the yarn through. Put the loop back on my hook, and I'm gonna just keep working with this hook because I'm liking the size of the stitches it gives me compared with the originals a little bit better. Okay, so I'm over here, so I'm gonna finish this round up by finishing the last 3 double crochet group in this corner, chain 1, this 3 double crochet group, and then I will slip stitch into the remnants of this chain up here. So I'll meet you there. Okay, so I'm ready to connect with a slip stitch to the remnants of the chain from the original work. So I'm just going to stick my hook in and do a slip stitch. Tighten that. Now up here, I've got a 3 double crochet group, and the chain that it was worked into has still survived. So my goal is going to be to work a chain 3, or rather a chain 2, slip stitch into that as the first double crochet of the 3 double crochet group that would normally go here. But I've got to get back here. So I'm going to do that by working slip stitches back across to this space. And I'm actually going to work these slip stitches backwards because that strikes me as a little bit easier right now than turning my work. Okay, it gives it a little bit of a bulkier top, but I'm okay with that. So now I'm going to chain 2 and slip stitch into this pre-existing chain above to connect and to finish building the first double crochet. But I want to make sure I get more than just like a single ply of the yarn. I want to really get through the body of the previous work so that it's connected very well. Okay, excellent. So now here, let's see, I'm just going to be working 1 3 double crochet group, chain 1, and then slip stitch into this corner group because this corner group is already here. So I'm getting to the part where there's not as much to fill in. So I'm going to work that, connect there, come back. Okay, so I've connected to the work and now I'm ready to do what looks like the last round of the repair. I joined at the chain, connecting these 2 groups. So it looks like what I've got to do now for this next row, we have 3 double crochets, the corner, 2 double crochets. So I need to build a double crochet here, chain 1. The chain 1 I'm building, I'm going to slip through this group, and then 3 double crochets in this space I just made. It looks a little messy right now because of the tails. And then connect those 3 double crochets to this base chain that's still hanging out here, and then I'll be done and just have to weave in ends. So that's awesome. I need to get back over here though to work my way up here for the last double crochet of this corner. So let me look at how I want to do that. I think I'm going to slip stitch my way across to that corner. Okay, and that does leave kind of the row of slip stitches across the top, and they do show because it's a different color. I'm okay with this here. I could see figuring out another way to maybe slip stitch just along the back so it doesn't show there. It's something you can kind of experiment with as you go, but I'm in here. So I'm gonna do my chain 2. And then here, I've got the loop of the last double crochet. So I think what I'm going to do is just pull my new yarn loop through here. So I'm going to go here, pull it through so that it's a connected group. Chain 1. Now I'm going to pull that chain 1 and the whole yarn through this base, then 3 double crochet in this space here, and then connect there. Now I did my last slip stitch to attach. I'm done with the crochet work, so I'm going to leave a long tail, pull that through. Now I'm going to go through and I'm going to weave in all these little stray ends, and I'm going to use those ends to kind of snug up anything that looks a little too loose or a little off, and you'll see the finished product. Here's the finished repaired square of the crocheted blanket. Hopefully this will give you the confidence to try your own crochet repairs on the blankets and other keepsakes you have. For this and more great crochet crafty information, Subscribe to my YouTube channel and visit www.thelindsaylife.com. See you next time.